Right, our final speaker for this short session is Michael Phillip, and we've headed north for Michael. He's from Scotland, so we've crossed the English border and headed north, but it's still blue skies and sunshine even up there. So I think the whole country is basking in glorious weather, and we're all inside. But what I do know is Michael is going to enthuse us to get out in recording networks, not, as I originally said, local groups. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've heard eloquently set out for everyone the value of the data. Matt mentioned that, how valuable it is to be able to use the BSBI database, and from Chris about the resources available for people to use, which are marvelous. So what we need now is an army of people. And what I'm going to talk about is one way of achieving that. And I want to say at the outset that local groups is a phrase often used in BSBI, and of course, excellent, wonderful, all to be encouraged. Local networks is something different. A local group I've defined as a relatively small number of people, relatively closely connected, who maybe go out regularly together. A local network is a large number of people, loosely connected, and that's the model I'm going to talk about now. Okay, are we on?
Yep, that's fine, Michael, thanks.
Okay. So I'm just going to introduce myself for a moment. I'm Michael Phillip, and I only joined BSBI a few years ago, but my name was known, and it didn't take long before I was approached to see if I'd be interested in becoming the Vice County Recorder for Lanarkshire, which was left vacant when my predecessor, a very eminent member of BSBI, Dr. Peter McPherson, who was recording into his 90th year, he died and the post was vacant. He had just completed his flora, so we have excellent resources, and I was somewhat in trepidation of stepping into his shoes. What is my background? This will surprise you. Nothing to do with botany at all. And when I look at this picture, I just want to draw two things to your attention, state the obvious. The first is that everybody in an orchestra is playing a different instrument, and therefore they have entirely different skills, and they're reading off entirely different pages of notation. And the conductor's job is entirely silent. A conductor isn't supposed to make any noise at all. And that serves as a good model for a network. Now I'm going to show you just a couple of slides from a presentation which I gave last year at this time to the Scottish Spring Conference. I said that when I came into post, what I really needed was someone to help me. This solitary figure on the stage, I went on to enumerate the qualities that this person has, because I was provided with the ideal person to help me, who had experience where I lacked it, who had knowledge where I lacked it, who had computer skills where I lacked them, who was a great photographer, and so on. And if you cast your eye down that list, boy, if you had someone like that on your side, that would be marvelous. Well, I did have someone like that on my side, and then I introduced to everyone who that is. It's not one person, but I do have all those skills to help. That's what has become known as Team 77. That is the Lanarkshire network, named after our Vice County number. And Team 77 started to be spoken about with that nickname, and quickly drew BSBI's attention, because in 6 years, we've got 79 people now signed up on our contact list, and that number is growing gradually all the time. During lockdown year, we contributed over 15,000 records to the DDB. In the same period, Renfrewshire, our neighbour, contributed just 3, and Dunbartonshire, also our neighbour, none at all. The reason Renfrewshire was so low in that year is because Keith Watson, the VCR, was working from home in Cumbria and was not able to get to his vice county. And so that's why so few records. And Dunbartonshire, the post of VCR was left vacant on the completion of work for Atlas 2020. And during lockdown, there was no activity. I understand that some records were subsequently backloaded to cover that period, but it was just, I think, about 400. So a year ago, Jim McIntosh, the Scottish officer, and I were talking about this, and we decided to try what has become known as the loose network model in those two neighbouring vice counties. And many members of Team 77 selflessly turned up at outings to help these two new networks to become established. So this has all happened within the last year. We're not yet at the first anniversary of launching these two new vice county networks. So now I want to tell you what happened, because if you mobilize an army, well, maybe that's too topical at this moment, but if you mobilize an army, you're going to achieve more than if you mobilize a small fighting force. In Renfrewshire, in the past year, 37 people have signed up, 21 active in fieldwork. You can read the figures for yourself. So Renfrewshire has gone from 3 records uploaded in 2020 to over 15,000 last year. That's a big step forward. And that is over double the number ever recorded in one year in Renfrewshire in history. And the third highest in Scotland last year. I'm going to take you through Dunbartonshire in a little more detail. My colleague Peter Wiggins stepped forward a year ago to be joint recorder with me for Lanarkshire, and this left me free to focus particularly on Dunbartonshire to develop the network there. And I have stepped into the role of Vice County Recorder for Dunbartonshire as an additional responsibility with the intention of replacing myself within 5 years. We'll see how that goes. You can hold me to that if you want. So how did we do it? Well, the first thing is to be clear about why you want to do it. You're not recruiting people to help you with the task. You're recruiting people because it's generally good to have lots of people interested in field botany, to train them up, to build their skills, to build their experience, and to pass on to the next generation and beyond. So the objective is lots of people motivated and equipped to record. The second thing was that we set a goal, and we were quite ambitious. We decided to try to achieve a fresh record for each of the 704 monads in Dunbartonshire in 10 years. 108 monads had never been recorded, and another similar number hadn't been looked at since the mid-1980s at the most recent, some going back further than that. So there was lots of new ground to cover, as well as lots of refining to do. And that goal has really motivated people to get involved. You know, the SMART goal setting, that to us seemed to be an achievable aim, an achievable goal. And the fact that it's time bound is interesting. People got involved signing on to the network because it's short term. It's going to be done in 10 years. Some of our principal partners in terms of the national park and landowners and local authorities like the fact that it's 10 years because it means they don't need to think about it for 2 or 3 years before we work out how best to cooperate. So they like the length of 10 years and other people like the shortness of 10 years, but the specific time bound is a real advantage. The next thing we did was unashamed, loud trumpeting of how wonderful we are, which was premature because when we said a big team of people is forming, a big team of people wasn't forming, but it was about to. And because people thought a big team was forming, they joined it. And therefore, a big team was forming. I hope that's not too gobbledygook. People wanted to be involved, and we put the word out everywhere we could think of. Word of mouth is possibly the best. And then everyone who got in touch was warmly welcomed, enthusiastically involved, correspondence, and we're looking forward to you getting out with us and finding plans. If you believe the myth, it becomes the truth. So state the myth first and then watch it unfold. You cannot overstate the importance of being encouraging. This was mentioned recently about finding a daisy. Jonathan mentioned it earlier. It might never have been recorded in that churchyard before. It's not to be sniffed at. And if somebody who's new to botany makes that record and contributes it, they can feel really good about themselves and they want to do more. So be encouraging. We have a lively newsletter, and I would invite you to look at the Dunbartonshire webpage. There's also a Renfrewshire one and a Lanarkshire one. But if you look at the Dunbartonshire one, you'll pick up the vibe of what we've been doing. Make everyone feel good. Everyone wants to belong to a winning team. And a favorite quote from my mum, which I shared a year ago, was, people are drawn towards the source of their encouragement. If you're encouraging, you'll never be short of people. And then, of course, be organized. Because if a lot of people are going to become involved, you're going to have to give significant time to it. Better if it's being done by a small team rather than by an individual. We have an ambitious outings program. In fact, I watched the Scottish Committee's jaw dropping last week when I said that between the 3 vice counties that are networked here, we have 45 field outings planned for this year, starting in April. So there's a lot of background organization to be done, but it is doable. And then finally, as in a football team or an orchestra, each individual should be developed. So you're trying to build individual skills, encourage different people in different directions to build their capability. Many people are set challenges. I wonder if you'd like to do this, or could you possibly go there? I emailed someone the other day to say I was planning the outings program, and I emailed someone who lives in the area and said, do you know if the fence onto that moorland is a deer fence? Do you happen to know that? And the following day, I got an email from him with a photograph of the fence. He went there, above and beyond. A wonderful little piece of work, which just makes things so much easier to do. With a large number of people involved, all sorts of things become possible, which would otherwise people wouldn't have time for. So very quickly, I'll run through what we achieved in the first year. We've got 54 people involved. I think the biggest number previously had been 5 or 6, of whom half were involved in fieldwork. We had 19 outings in Dunbartonshire. We uploaded the highest number of records for any vice county in Scotland last year, over 20,000. And in case you think we're massaging the statistics, just to include dandelion in every square, daisy in every square, greater plantain in every square, you can build the numbers that way. We didn't, because over half the records we uploaded were new monad records. We saw 884 different species in Dunbartonshire last year, and 83 monads are now well recorded according to the criteria that we've set. We need an average of 70 a year. So we're on track to record every monad afresh in 10 years. So the big question I'm asking in the newsletter that's just about to go out, I don't know if you can guess what the question will be. In a dynamic network, can we do it in 9 years? That would be something. Record an entire vice county in 9 years. We're on track to do that. I'll leave this on the screen for you to read, but I would draw your attention to the fact that across the 3 vice counties, which are networked, integrated, 122 people is something quite different from a local group. And I'm trying to encourage in all areas of BSBI that people should adopt the word network into the vocabulary, because in some places, network, a new network, a loose network, will be the thing that will unlock involvement of people, particularly new people. It has great potential for new BSBI membership. And as Chris alluded to, or Jonathan, in fact, alluded to a minute ago, potential new VCRs over time as well. There's a new network training resource in preparation. It'll be available soon. And if this is relevant to you, we're looking for one local area somewhere in Britain outside of West Central Scotland to start a new network. And we will work with you to do that. And that will help us to make the training universal rather than just what we've done here. So if you're interested, get in touch. My email is at the bottom there. A quote to leave with you. A network makes no demands. It creates possibilities. A local group, people feel, oh, I better turn out, otherwise I'll let the side down. But with a large number of people involved, that's not an issue, but all sorts of things become possible which cannot be achieved by a small group, notably the amount of ground you can cover. So I leave it there, and I'm happy to receive questions if you wish.
Thank you very much, Michael. There's certainly lots of great ideas there, and hopefully we'll be able to take on some of them in England. I think one way that you have a distinct advantage over us is that you've got open access to all your monads. And that's something that is sadly not possible in England, but nevertheless, it doesn't hurt to set the target.
But it doesn't be that target. It could be to re-find all species not seen in the last 10 years.
Yep, and that's certainly another achievable one.
Record every churchyard. You know, I mean, it can be, or involve X number of people under the age of 30, or, you know, you can set your goal as anything you like, really.
Yeah, and I think in England, we probably have some types of local group that we don't necessarily know about. So, for example, I know in Cambridgeshire, we've got some U3A groups who regularly go out, but they're not so good at sending in records. So getting them a bit more enthusiastic that they can make a contribution. And I think that's perhaps what they miss. They don't realize that their little backyard pottering, as it were, actually makes a difference. And that's what we need to get out.
Yes, absolutely. They are part of the network. It's just making them feel part of the network is the trick.
Yeah. So there's one or two things that have come up in the chat. One is somewhat embarrassing for me because I've been doing a fair bit of recording in Shropshire, and I've managed to visit quite a few monads that had no previous records. So Alec Lockton decided he'd call these shanklins, and you get a big tick if you go and record a species in these shanklins. So you've sort of beaten me to it a little bit up north, but it is really quite fun going to these monads that have no previous records, because you've no idea what you'll find there. Sometimes they're just quite boring farmland, but other times they have really interesting species. And sometimes even at this time of year, there are things to find. So don't just confine yourself to summer visits. Go out in the winter as well.
I was out with one of our Dumbartonshire Network people on the 27th of January, and we recorded 110 species in a monad. So it can be done.
It certainly can, and it is astonishing. I think some of it is thanks to John Poland's Vegetative Key Book. That makes a big difference. So it's another resource that is available. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you're used to it, then it's a really valuable resource. And the other thing, which we don't, I think, have a book about at the moment, is being able to recognize dead plants. And being able to do that, you can add a surprising number of plants that are still showing features even though they're no longer green.
Yes, and people may be interested to know that we still have over 800 completely unrecorded monads in Lanarkshire. That's unrecorded at monad level. We have tetrad records, which cover many of them. But if anyone wants a trip to Scotland and come and help us cut new ground, get in touch and come and help us deal with our 800 shanklins. Is that what they're called?
That's what they're called, yeah. So yeah, do go out there and make the records. So I don't think there's any specific questions for you, Michael, but you have enthused all of us, and that is really part of it. We're now part of your network of botanists, so thank you.
A network of networks, that's it.
Yeah.